We follow the story of an amazing housewife and artist named Helen. She is filled with energy and excitement, as today is the day of her daughter's freshman orientation in college. Furthermore, her and her husband's 20th anniversary is coming up at the end of the month. Helen is cooking breakfast for her family. Her husband, Paul, is on his phone, sitting at the dinner table waiting for breakfast. She casually suggests that he should not be on his phone on this special day for their daughter, Allie. He explains that his boss is asking him for an update on their latest project. Helen reiterates that today is family time. At that moment, Allie gets down from upstairs and excitedly greets her parents. Paul kisses her on the top of her head and Helen hugs her, telling her how much she will miss her. Her grandmother suddenly appears and reminds them that Allie is just going to be a few hours away. Helen is surprised by her sudden visit and reminds her that her keys are only for emergencies. That does not imply that she can waltz into their house whenever she likes. Susan ignores her and proceeds to criticize the breakfast she made. Helen tries to get her family to interact for Allie's sake, despite the disrespect she is getting from her mother and husband. Allie is back in her room, packing up some last things she plans to bring with her to college. Helen comes in and hands her a present. It is a framed drawing of a teddy bear, to remind her of her favorite bear at home. Allie hugs her in gratitude, and tells her that she should pursue her passion for art. Paul tells them that the car is all loaded up, and they are ready to go. Allie is enrolled at Northeastern Point University. Her parents help her get settled in her dorm room. After a few reminders, they hug her and say their goodbyes. A girl with brown curly hair walks in and introduces herself as Dana. She is Allie's roommate, and the moment that her parents are gone, Dana drops her good girl facade and reveals her party girl personality. She tells Allie to ditch the freshman orientation, and invites her to a frat party instead. Paul and Helen are back in the car, sitting in disbelief that their little girl is already grown up. Paul reminisces about the time that they were teenagers, riding on his motorcycle and going for a drive together. He suggests that now that their daughter is all grown up, maybe they can focus on their relationship once again. However, Helen is so caught up with their daughter that she is satisfied with the way things are. Back at home, Paul informs Helen that he is leaving for work in a couple of hours. She naturally wishes him luck for his presentation. He asks her if they can continue their conversation from earlier, since he still has some time left before he leaves. However, after their long and emotion-filled day, Helen tells him that they will talk about it when he gets back. Paul is disappointed, but he agrees nonetheless. A few days have passed, and Helen is hanging out with her friends, sharing stories about their children going to college. She wonders where her husband is, knowing that he is supposed to be back already. She calls him. While she is outside the restaurant, Helen crosses paths with Ben, who is walking his two dogs. They recognize each other since their children were classmates during high school, and they are going to the same college. Ben is a veterinarian, and he commends Helen, remembering that she is an artist. They exchange goodbyes, and Ben walks away with his pets. Helen calls Paul asking where he is, just to find out that he is already at home. This disappoints her, as she and their friend have been waiting for him. Still, she tells him that she will see him when she gets home. Ben is spending time with his second-born, Charlie. He and his ex-wife have shared custody of their children, Mark, who is at college, and Charlie. Charlie casually asks him how he is, since he heard his mother and brother talking about him, saying that Ben might be happier if he meets someone. Ben assures him that he is fine the way he is, and it is nothing to be worried about. Helen arrives home at night and sees that Paul is leaving again. He tells her that he got promoted, but his location is much further away from their place. This takes Helen by surprise, as she was expecting him to travel less from now on. Still, she is willing to consider going long distance. Paul cuts her short, saying that he is not considering long distance. After putting much thought into how he feels, he realizes that the two of them have grown apart through the years. He asks Helen that they finally separate, since Allie does not need them as much anymore. Fueled by shock and panic, Helen tells him that he might just be having a crisis. Their anniversary is coming up. He cannot just throw everything out the window. Paul does not respond, and simply tells her that he is spending some time in the office to give some space for the both of them. The next morning, Helen is sketching at her office, muttering to herself that she and Paul are not splitting up. Susan walks through her door, carrying a pot of cooked chicken, when she hears her muttering. She enters her office and asks her what is going on between her and her husband. Helen is surprised to see her there. She does not respect the boundaries her daughter has set up, and feels entitled to her whole person. Helen simply tells her that they had an argument, and repeats what Paul said to her. Susan naturally gives her unsolicited advice, saying that they should work on their marriage. Helen has had enough of her, and apologizes for her imperfect marriage. She shuts the bathroom door and takes a shower to clear her thoughts. Later that day, Helen hears some rustling on her front porch. She walks out of her office to take a look, and finds the same dog she saw in her garden when they got back from Allie's college. She gives the dog some water, and seeing that it appears to be well fed, says goodbye before closing the door. Paul returns home at night with a romantic dinner waiting for him. Helen has prepared a nice dinner for the two of them, hoping to work things out. She tells him that they can figure things out, and that she is willing to listen to him. He thanks her, but explains that he just came to hand her the papers to make their legal separation official. Helen does not believe that separation will do them any good, and is devastated by the decision Paul is making. Paul sits across from her and pleads that they get through it as friends. She is having none of it, and asks him to leave the house as she deals with her emotions. Helen spends the night alone, contemplating what her life has become. She hears another rustling at her door, and thinks that Paul has come back. However, when she opens the door, she sees the small dog from earlier. Surprised that the dog is still outside her house, Helen tries looking for its collar to learn who the owner is. When she sees that the dog does not have a collar, she decides to let it stay for the night. Since their romantic dinner was a failure, she offers the chicken to the dog before calling Ben to ask for help. She introduces herself and apologizes for calling him so late. She tells him the situation about the dog and shares a little bit too much of her frustration. Ben notices that she seems frustrated, and not just because of the whole dog situation. Embarrassed by her slight emotional breakdown, Helen apologizes once more. Ben assures her that it is all right, and it is normal for anyone to have some bad days. He recommends bringing the dog to the clinic tomorrow, so they can see if the dog has an ID on it. Helen wakes up the next day to a call from Allie. Allie asks her for her clothes, and is surprised to see a cute little dog in their house. She is delighted to see her mom try something new while she is gone. Helen realizes that since the dog does not have a tag, she can name him. She decides to name him Elmer, since he likes to stick around her all the time. Later that day, Susan arrives at Helen's place, delighted to see the dog. Helen is surprised, knowing that her mother does not like dogs, but Susan explains that it was her husband who does not like dogs, and she just adjusted to him for the sake of the marriage. Helen spitefully tells her what happened the night before between her and Paul. Helen runs late for her yoga session with her friends. They immediately comfort her the moment she walks in. Helen realizes that they already know the news, and asks them to ask their husbands to learn everything about Paul's decision, and try to convince him that he is making a mistake. However, her friends are only willing to give her emotional support, as they respect Paul's decision, since they are friends with him as well. Helen feels betrayed, and decides to walk away from them. She returns home to a mess caused by Elmer. This finally pushes her to drop by the vet clinic, to try and locate the dog's owner through its ID chip. After examination, Ben tells Helen that the dog does not have an ID chip, and suggests that she take him in. Helen tells him that she has never had a dog before, so she is not the right person to take care of him. Furthermore, she is going through a lot at the moment, so she cannot handle it. Ben assures her that he understands what she is going through, and says that she can leave Elmer with him. He will call shelters to put him up for adoption. Helen has not gotten far from the clinic when she changes her mind and decides that she can look after him while they look for a new owner. She reiterates that she has no idea how to take care of a dog or what it needs. Ben offers to accompany her to a pet store and help her out. Helen puts Elmer in the cart as she and Ben buy some essentials, toys, and clothes for him. He sends her the best pet park he knows, so she can bring him there for some exercise. Helen pays at the counter and thanks Ben for helping her out. Ben receives a message from Helen, showing him the adoption poster she made for Elmer. His colleague sees that he is talking to a girl and jibes at him. Ben clarifies that he is just helping her with the stray dog, and his priorities are only his children and his vet practice. Helen brings Elmer to the park the next day. She attaches his adoption poster to the park fence before bringing him in. A fellow dog owner notices her struggling, and decides to tell her some tips for getting her dog to follow her. She demonstrates a few tricks with her dog, and encourages Helen to try it with Elmer. Helen is reluctant at first, but she is delighted when Elmer follows her command. Helen introduces herself and invites her new friend, Cindy, for coffee to ask for her advice on being a dog parent. Cindy agrees, and tells her that she knows a good place where they can hang out. At the coffee shop, Cindy gives her some advice on handling Elmer. Helen realizes that it is similar to raising kids. She half-jokingly asks if she can use the same trick for a husband who walked away. Cindy guarantees her that she is better off without him, but Helen does not want that. Cindy empathizes with her. When she got divorced from her ex-husband, she thought that her life was over, but she picked herself up and pursued her passion. Now she cannot live her life any other way than the way it is today. She gives Helen the number of a great lawyer she knows, and encourages her to stand up for herself. Taking on Cindy's advice, she starts making small changes in her life. She decides that she is going to change the oil in her car by herself. She sends Allie a picture of her up for the task, which Allie thinks is weird, considering that her dad always did that. It is a challenge for Helen, since it is the first time that she is doing it, but she is surely enjoying herself, and feels satisfied to be in control of something. Paul pulls into her driveway, and is surprised to see her covered in oil. She casually asks him for his business, and he explains that he just dropped by to pick up some of his things. She finally decides to call the lawyer Cindy recommended, and makes up her mind to stand for herself. One morning, Helen brings Elmer to the park, where she sees Ben with his dogs. They allow them to play while the two of them sit on the bench. Wanting to get to know more about her new friend, Helen asks him about what he did before going back to vet school. He shares that he was a sales manager for a long time, and after his divorce, he decided to stop moping around and pursue his lifelong passion. Helen shares that she pursued arts in college and then started a family. Now that she is not occupied with being a wife and a mother, she is considering pursuing her passion for art once again. Ben commends and encourages her. Helen receives a call from her lawyer. Meanwhile, Allie is standing uncomfortably at another party she decided to come to accompany her roommate. She knows that she has not been focusing on her studies and is having a hard time keeping up. Dana tries pulling her to the dance floor, but Allie pretends to be answering a phone call. She gets out of the party house and sees a guy hanging out. Allie introduces herself and thinks that the guy is familiar. The guy introduces himself as Trevor and says that he is a freshman as well. They discover that they both do not want to be there, but societal pressure gets the better of them. Their conversation is cut short when they hear Dana's name being chanted by the crowd. Allie goes to check on her, and they say their goodbyes. At the pet park, Helen shares with Cindy that she is now in the process of legalities for her separation. Cindy invites her to her show to get her mind off of things and try to enjoy herself. Helen decides to invite her to her supposed anniversary dinner with her mother for emotional support. Being a supportive friend, Cindy accepts her invitation. The day of the anniversary arrives. Helen arrives at the restaurant, dressed beautifully in a magnificent short body dress. Susan greets and compliments her daughter. Soon after, Cindy arrives and greets the two of them. Susan is surprised to see her daughter's new outgoing and liberated friend as Helen introduces them to each other. To everyone's surprise, Paul arrives at the restaurant. It turns out that Susan set up the whole dinner so Helen and Paul could reconcile their marriage. Helen walks out of the restaurant with Paul on her heels, apologizing for the whole mess. Helen assures him that it is not his fault, and she knows that this is all her mother's doing. They finally have the chance to talk to each other. Helen asks him why did he not talk to her before everything escalated. Paul tells her that he tried talking to her, but he felt unheard most of the time. Helen regrets what happened to them. Paul wants them to end on good terms and to remain friends, since he cares so much for her. Helen finally comes to terms with their relationship. She knows that Paul has always been an incredible father to Allie, and they will continue to be her parents. She is now starting to accept that their relationship as a couple is coming to an end. She congratulates him on their anniversary for the last time before leaving. Helen returns home to process her emotions. She leaves her chocolate cake from the restaurant to get some ice cream. During this time, Elmer decides to eat the cake. When she returns to the couch with her ice cream, she finds Elmer looking sick and whimpering on the couch. She quickly calls Ben and tells him about the situation. Ben is immediately dismayed when he hears this, knowing that dogs are not allowed to eat chocolate. Helen feels a twinge of panic rising to her chest. Ben calms her down and tells her to bring Elmer to the clinic immediately. After a rough night for Elmer, Ben brings him out of his room and assures Helen that he is going to be fine. She rushes to hug Elmer and thanks Ben for helping them out. Ben offers to drop by her house the next day to personally check on Elmer. She agrees and thanks him once again before leaving the clinic. Ben drops by her house and gives Helen a bunch of gifts for her dog, which she is delighted to receive. He pulls up a painting set as a gift for her, taking her by surprise, as she never expected anything from him as a gift. She thinks that it is very thoughtful of him. Ben notices her box set, and they spend some time geeking over their favorite novels when they were in high school. Helen starts admiring his kind and thoughtful personality. Soon, Ben has to leave for work, and they settle that they'll go on a walk together with their dogs when Elmer gets better. Back at the university, Allie is at the library from morning until night, trying to catch up on her studies. She accidentally falls asleep at her desk after her long hours of hard work. Trevor walks up to her and wakes her up with a start. He apologetically tells her that the library is closing up, but he knows a place where she can study. Ben helps pack her things up and offers to accompany her. Helen and Ben finally have their walk with their dogs on a nearby forest trail. They share stories about their childhood and get to know more about each other. The rain suddenly starts pouring, and they run back to Helen's house. Helen changes into her dry clothes and offers Ben some clothes too. The two of them are laughing about how ridiculous he looks. Ben mentions how great of an artist she is. She diverts the conversation to thank him for the painting set he gave her, and gives him an art piece to show her gratitude. Ben is stunned by the sheer hard work she dedicates to herself, while Helen downplays herself, saying that her art is incomparable to something like the Mona Lisa. She remembers the Louvre Museum in France, and says that it is her dream travel destination. This gives Ben an idea as he plays a jazzy song on his phone, pretending that they are in Paris. The two of them dance around the kitchen, laughing with each other. Ben twirls Helen around until she stops closer to him, their faces inches away from each other. They gaze into each other's eyes with newfound admiration, before breaking away in awkwardness. Helen receives a call about Elmer's adoption poster, claiming that they are the owner. She is naturally taken aback, but assures the caller that they can meet up. She bathes Elmer the next day to prepare him for his owner. She receives a call from Ben, inviting her to an art show. She made an impact on him, inspiring him to become more open to art. Helen agrees, and their plan is all set. Helen and Ben spend the next day together in each other's company. She tells him about Elmer's potential owner, which she is happy about, but she cannot help but miss him dearly. He assures her that it is part of loving a pet, and that her feelings are valid. That afternoon, Helen brings Elmer to the owner's house. She meets a family of 4, and they tell her that Elmer's original owner was their uncle, who passed away recently. Seeing that they already have a lot on their plate, Helen asks them if Elmer can stay with her permanently, as she is willing to give him a home. Seeing that Helen and Elmer have grown attached, the happy couple agrees. Ben visits her and brings Elmer a small doggy bed. He notices her sketches of Elmer posted on the wall and commends her. Helen tells him that she is planning on turning her artwork into a book. Since Elmer is having a lot of adventures with her, she wants to have a lot of adventures herself. Helen brings Ben along to wall climbing, wanting to face her fear of heights. Later that day, she thanks him over a cup of coffee for coming along without any hesitation. Ben tells her that he usually does things all by himself, so it is nice to have a partner for a change. He confesses that he wants them to be more than just friends, if she feels the same way for him. This surprises Helen, but she honestly tells him that although she is starting to feel something for him, she does not think that it is what she needs at the moment. She wants to rediscover herself first and focus on her passion. Helen and Paul meet up with their respective lawyers to finalize their separation. Paul suddenly blurts out that he wants to make things work between them and try to fix their marriage. Helen knows that he is just as scared as she is to take their separate journeys. She tells him that they have nothing to fix, and she knows that he is also really passionate about what he is doing. Paul gives her one final hug before they sign their separation papers. Allie arrives home and sees a list of things that each of her parents are taking away. When they arrive after her, she confronts them about the situation. They explain that they are separated, and the reason why they did not tell her sooner is because she has so much going on with her life, and they did not want to add any stress to her. Allie spits out that they do not need to worry about that anymore, because she might be losing her scholarship, and needs to switch to an easier course. She runs out of the house, and Elmer follows her out. Their whole family spends the afternoon looking for Elmer, leaving Helen devastated. Ben helps her out looking for him, until they stop at a nearby park. He asks her whether they are on good terms, since she has been a lot more quiet since he confessed his feelings. Helen tells him that she is not ready to start something new with him. Helen finds Elmer sitting on her front porch and hugs him in delight. She brings him inside, and when her family sees that he's back, they all feel relieved. Later that night, Helen visits Allie in her room, bringing food to comfort her. She apologizes for not telling her about their situation sooner. Allie voices her protest for her parents not being together anymore, but she wants the both of them to be happy. Helen and Susan decide to go together to Cindy's show and have some fun. She turns around and sees Ben at the back of the crowd, then apologizes for putting her on the spot before, and offers to be her friend if she wants. By this time, Helen finally realizes that what they have going on between them is something special. They finally decide to give their relationship a chance and take everything slowly.